welcome to this special episode of the Rowlett podcast that unveils the profound story behind the new 9/11 memorial sculpture being installed at Fire Station 2. If you're a new listener to this podcast, welcome. My name is Hannah Rabalais, and I'm your host. Our mission on this podcast is to provide you with an insider's look into city initiatives and the people who help shape our community. I hope you listen to this full episode because we delve deep into the heartwarming story behind this powerful piece of art and explore the profound connections that bind a community together in remembrance and gratitude. I've had the honor to sit down with key stakeholders who brought this vision to life, and I couldn't think of a better person to start telling the story than Rowlett's Fire Chief, Neil Howard. Why is having a sculpture memorializing 9/11 at Fire Station 2 important for our community?
Well, it helps us tie community to what happened that day, because it really affected everybody in our nation that day. Our whole nation shut down that day, which we've never, probably haven't seen anything like that since Pearl Harbor, right? You know, that's the only other time that we've had any attack on American soil, really.
Right.
And this was basically another attack on American soil, which really affected people all the way across the country. So there's people living in our community that were actually at 9/11 in New York the day that happened. And so we're just trying to commemorate part of what is important to the fire service. We've never lost that many firefighters in a year.
Right.
Needless to say, a single event. So that's kind of part of that. And we'll be able to memorialize each one of those individuals when this monument is in place. We have been partnering with Arts and Humanities for several years. As you know, that we have a sculpture at each one of our fire stations. So when it came time to do the one at Fire Station 2, we took advantage. A lot of them are more of abstract art. We took advantage to have something there that would commemorate the tragedy of 9/11.
Right.
And that was kind of built upon what history, I mean, Rowlett's kind of a young fire department, if you will, established in 1955. So there's not a whole bunch of history, but the fire service is built on history and tradition, right? So in trying to keep that tradition alive, the year after 9/11, the guys at the old Station 2, did 343 crosses to commemorate those that lost their lives the year before. And those were all out in the yard at Fire Station 2. We still use those crosses today up till even last year. Yes.
Wow.
So this was an opportunity for us to do something to carry on that tradition, because the crosses are getting a little tattered and torn, and we've babied them and taking really good care of them over the years. But we wanted to do something special that would not just be for that day, but people that's affected by the event would have a place to come and just visit in our community. We use our training facility for a lot of things. We have a lot of people coming through our community, and feel like it's our opportunity to share something that would commemorate that tragic day for us.
As Deborah Crosby, Arts and Humanities Commission Chair, eloquently puts it, despite being a small city thousands of miles away from Ground Zero, Rowlett deeply supports and loves our own first responders. This sculpture stands as a poignant reminder of the bravery displayed on that fateful day and the daily sacrifices made by first responders. Let's hear more from Deborah Crosby and Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Jeff Winget, two representatives from the Arts and Humanities Commission. What is the Arts and Humanities Commission?
So the Arts and Humanities Commission is an appointed commission by the City Council our job is to encourage and enhance the community through the arts. And the arts can be music, it can be literature, it can be visual arts, sculpture.
It is a city-appointed board and been in operation for probably almost 20 years now, I believe. It was formed a long time ago. A big part of what we do is contests and grants that we issue to the community that people can apply for. Various contests ranging from photography contests to writing contests, Rowlett Sings, and then also the huge public art program that is pretty much what we're here to talk about today.
Exactly. So tell us how this journey began to create this new public sculpture that will be going into Fire Station 2.
So back in 2021, when we were still under the COVID restrictions, we were meeting by Zoom and pretty much looking for anything to fill our meetings with because we weren't able to meet in person. Chief Howard had come to us, I believe it was on August 10th in 2021, and he presented an idea that he had long mulled over about wanting to have a memorial sculpture for 9/11 So we have a public art committee that met with Chief Howard to sort of flesh out what his ideas were about the piece. We have a lot of abstract art already placed around the city, and I think Chief Howard was looking for something much more representational. And so in the process of meeting with the Public Art Committee, they sort of got a very detailed idea about what it was he wanted. We had wanted to place a piece at Station 2, but that station was under construction with a new facility. So we kind of held off on the whole process until we knew what was going to happen there and that building was complete. You don't want to be trying to place art under construction sites. That's not too good. So that was a little bit of a delay in that process, but it all worked out well because in the course of time, he came to us with this idea. And so we were able to sort of, again, flesh those ideas out, get a clear understanding of what it was he was looking for. And at that point, we decided we would put together a request for proposal and put that out publicly. So that went out to a multitude of different sites in a public request for artists to give us proposals of what they thought this would look like. And in the course of that, I believe we had 41 artists submit pieces from around the country. So it was pretty intense. We had a lot of stuff coming in, and some of it was very representational of stuff that you would think of when you think about 9/11.
Right.
Some of it were pieces from artists that sent us things that they had done in the past, but they didn't necessarily show us anything that was specific to 9/11.
Gotcha.
So it kind of helped us narrow the field rather quickly. There were about, I think, 10 to 12 pieces that really spoke to what it was we had asked for. So those kind of rose to the top. And we had a public art committee made up of members of the community, Chief Howard, our city liaison, Laura Turner, members of the Public Works Department and the Parks and Recreation Department,
cool.
Other people who had been on the Arts and Humanities Commission. It's just a nice group of, representational of different people in the city. And so they came in, and we just basically took dots and went around and put
cool.
dots on pictures that we liked. And again, the top 3 came to the top.
From that last 3 finalist group, we had each of the artists create a mock-up of what it would look like. And so it was really great because they shipped them to us, and so we had all 3 pieces physically in front of us.
Oh, wow.
And obviously with pandemic restrictions, we had to meet with each of them digitally, so we met with each of them remotely. And then they also visit us in person as well. So they made their presentation remotely, but they were able to visit with us in person, and we actually held a listening session where we had members of the community come out, look at each of the pieces, hear a presentation from each of the artists, and just get an idea of what the community had in mind. But all that said, there wasn't a bad piece among the final group. They were all tremendous, and they were all tremendous in their own way, which is the characteristic of art.
Yes.
So it was great to see that we had 3 different very interesting pieces that had their own take on what 9/11 meant, not only to them, but what they thought 9/11 meant to our city, which was really cool to see.
We were really happy with those 3 final selections. I believe the artists' name were Linda Serrero, Harold Link, and John Millet.
What makes this sculpture even more special is that it was designed by a Rowlett artist and local tenured art teacher, Jonathan Millet, who shares a special connection with this tribute. Let's hear more about his vision, process, and source of inspiration. Creating a memorial sculpture for such a significant and tragic event must have been a deeply emotional journey. Can you share what motivated you to take on this project and how you approached the creative process?
Yeah, it's emotionally twofold for me. One of just the obviously the events around 9/11. I went to graduate school in New York.
Oh, wow.
And so I was at Pratt Institute up in Brooklyn. And so I used to go into New York quite often. I made it part of my job to go into the town weekly and visit some of the great museums that are in there. So that was I felt like that was part of my educational experience when I was up there. And the World Trade Center was actually one of the main areas I'd have to go through underground. There's a whole metro system under there.
Right.
And so I often was at the World Trade Center going through the trains there, going uptown to the museums and stuff like that, and the galleries in order to go from Brooklyn over that way. And so had that significance of just that I'd been there quite often, been in that city for a couple years as an art student. And then we've taken trips up there with our students where I teach. We'd gone up there and visited the World Trade Center many times. In fact, we were there that summer before with my son Max, who's actually the model for the sculpture.
Yes.
But then also the context that I have another son who has special needs. So I have 4 children. 3 of them, the younger 3, have a kind of a genetic disorder. And so my son Marshall loves everything fire related. And so he knows the fire stations here in Rowlett very well. He goes and he visits those. And he, that's what we quite frequently go, and he the firemen are so kind and so beautiful and gracious with him, and they allow him to come in and tour the facilities and see the trucks and ask questions and see things. And I know if he didn't have special needs, he'd be a fireman for sure. He just loves everything about it. And so it's our hobby to go as we go throughout, even the country sometimes, like, just visiting places.
Oh,
we
wow.
always have to stop at a local fire station, visit the firemen and see the firehouse and try and grab a T-shirt if we can. And so he's got about 50 T-shirts from around the country, all
That's so
fire related.
special. Wow.
Yeah, so when Debbie came to me and asked me to be a judge initially for this contest or for the sculpture, and so I agreed. I'd done some other work for her as a judge. And so I told her, I said, well, yeah, I'll do it. But then I was looking at the prospectus and I saw it was for the firehouse. I was like, I owe it to my son to try and throw my name in the hat and just to kind of go for it. And as I was reading it, I was like, hey, I get this. I understand it. I'm just going to put my name in. And so I called Debbie up and I withdrew, from being the judge of the contest and said, I'm going to withdraw, but I want to throw my name in the hat and just see what I can do with it. And so that's kind of the precedence of how that kind of started and how that, and really the influence of my son Marshall of just like knowing that if I did get it, it would be something up that when we go visit Fire Station 2 on our regular visits, then the sculpture would be there and it would have this kind of a personal connection for him that way as well. So
beautiful. Well, we heard that you actually were one of the last minute entries too, Deborah shared.
Yeah.
So we're so glad you entered,
you.
making the leap from the judge to actually entering, and just love the personal touch with your son, Marshall. I think that is truly so special, and love that your legacy and his love for the fire department will be infused into that sculpture. So that is so touching. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So did you take input from the fire department? So how was, describe that process with working with Chief Howard, maybe even working with the commission to create this sculpture. What was that process like? Yeah,
they were pretty specific in their, in the prospectus about what was happening on there. Like I said, as I was reading through that, I really got a kind of a pretty clear vision. I think even just reading through it and thinking of it more from the mindset of judging and then going, hey, I see a vision of what I could create here. And so I kind of did a really quick just sketch of what I was thinking that night, which really is kind of the fruition of this. It wasn't far off from this, of just, hey, this would work and this could be maybe a neat idea for it. Obviously it's got a Pentagon base for the Pentagon that was also attacked that day. Then it has Twin Towers coming up off of it. And then it's got, but then part of it, they wanted to recognize the firefighters that lost their lives at 9/11. And so I was thinking it would be kind of neat to do, kind of cut out the fire crest logo, that's on there, the Maltese cross.
Yes.
And so we have 343 of those cut out in steel on there. And then inside of that, there's a plexiglass plate on the backside with the firemen, of each of the firemen that lost their lives at 9/11. So all 343 are represented in the sculpture. And then on top of that, there's 2 kind of firemen that are up on top of that. One represents the city of Rowlett, and that fireman is kind of geared up, ready to go, and kind of in charge of, hey, I'm ready to serve. One of the things, just in, with my adventures with my son Marshall, of going to fire stations all over the country, you see the same characteristics, and that these are brave men and women that are willing to put themselves out in front of others and willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of others. And we've always just loved that quality of this sacrifice and service that firemen all over the country have had. We're always welcomed in firehouses. They always treat him kindly and with respect, even though he has special needs. They're just some of the most humble and just wonderful people, And so, you kind of this realization that they're there and they're ready to go and they're ready to serve. They're ready to put themselves out there on the front lines and really put themselves out there in harm's way many times. And that's something that, really resonated with me. So I wanted to have a fireman that represented this idea that I'm ready to go. I'm still, even after 9/11, I'm still ready to go step out there. I'm still ready to step in that building. And so that's very meaningful and poignant that, to realize that there are a group of individuals, a massive group across this nation of men and women that really are willing to do that on a daily basis and step up. And then the other fireman that's up there is, I wanted to use my son Marshall as the model for it, but because of his special needs, he had a hard time going through the casting process and wasn't able to do it. And so my son Max was there, who's a pilot, ironically.
Wow.
And so he just got hired by Southwest Airlines. A little plug for them,
Congrats,
I guess.
Yay!
Yeah. So we used him as the model for that. And so as we're doing it, and you have to kind of have their eyes have to be closed, and then you have to remodel it once they, you do it if you want their eyes opened. And as I was looking at that, I was like, man, it really looks like he's in this kind of meditation and kind of prayerful kind of a pose. And I really love that because I thought, we also need to be praying for these people. We need to be uplifting these people. We need to be encouraging these people that serve us on a daily basis. And we forget that sometimes. We just kind of take it for granted. And it's like, well, no, they're putting themselves on a line every day for us. And so the other one, my son Max, the one of his represents New York, and on the back of his jacket says New York. And he's holding his helmet, and he's kind of looking up in kind of this more of a prayerful kind of a posture. And it's this idea of like, hey, keep these people in your well thoughts and your well wishes and your prayers, and keep them, where you're thinking about them, because they're serving you. And this is how we can serve them. And this is the way that we can do that. So I wanted to represent both of those with the firemen that are on top of there. Of one is this, I'm serving you, and the other one is we want to serve you as well as a community. And so I wanted that specifically to be positioned at the station, hopefully, that as the fire trucks come in, as they come in after a call, that's what they see. They see that one that's in posture of prayer, kind of like, hey, we've got a community of people that care about you, are thankful for you, and are praying for you and your safety as you serve us that way.
So the materials used in a sculpture can carry significant symbolic meaning. Could you tell us about the materials you chose for the memorial sculpture and why you selected them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a concrete base there, and it is kind of this foundational kind of base that's part of it. And on the side of it is a stone facade, and that stone facade says, "We will never forget 9/11/01." And I purposely put it's on the 5 different sides, so you can't really read the phrase at one time. So I wanted to kind of force the viewers, in essence, to say, come up and engage with it, like, hey, what's the rest of this say, and walk around it. But in the experience of walking around it, you also then see the fire crests that are like, oh, now there's something inside of there. What is that? Oh, it's a name. Oh, what's that name? Oh, okay, that's the fireman. And so it kind of, sometimes you can look at monumental sculptures from a distance and just kind of appreciate. And I wanted to be able to pull people into it that way. So that was important. And so we have cut stone from Austin that we did with the letters on there, where the letters are etched into the side, engraved into the side. And then the 2 towers are stainless steel towers up there, and obviously representing the steel, of the twin towers that were there. And like I said before, the cutout crest that could be in there, the Maltese crosses that could be inside of that deal of the towers. One of the symbolic things of that as well is that we have lights inside the towers. And so at night, those will be illuminated. And I wanted kind of a light blue light inside of there to kind of represent the idea of the souls that have been given, that have been sacrificed, and the remembrance of that, hopefully as people drive by that, especially at night, and they see that illuminated and they see that, the pattern of those emblems there, they realize people served us, people served one another. And again, going back to that kind of a service quality there. So the materials do play a big part of that. Having that affordability of being able to do that. Then obviously the bronze sculptures, and bronze is just a tried and true medium for sculpture of this longevity of most sculptures are made out of bronze, of being able to last and endure kind of the pains and the hardships and the things, of nature, the storms that will come and hit this sculpture from time to time, that it really needs that material, kind of needs to kind of resonate with that. And so that's actually one of the things I just have been talking with the Foundry about as they finish up, is to put on a patina there that I wanted to look a little bit worn. I didn't want it to look like it's a brand new sculpture there, that I want to look like it's just a little bit weathered, like it's been out there for a while. Because I love that kind of look where it's, you look at something that's been there and it's been time kind of honored and weathered and had to endure storms. And so I wanted that sense, hopefully from the beginning with the sculptures themselves up top, of just like there's a weathering that's taken place. I left a lot of texture on the jackets and things of that nature in order to give this really kind of a harshness to it, very purposely, because of understanding what this memorializes, that there is a harshness to it, but yet there's a beauty in the materials and there's a beauty in the surviving, the aging, the storms that kind of come through life that way.
So what kind of experience do you hope visitors will have when they encounter it?
I hope that when they see it, they will reflect, reflect on how do we serve one another? What is my, hopefully maybe even ask that question, how do I serve?
Yeah.
And at what point do I serve? And what does that look like? And it's not necessarily everybody has to go sign up to be a fireman. But there's other ways in your own community and just with neighborhoods and other areas. How do I serve one another? Am I that type of person that's willing to run into a burning building for someone else, and knowing there's a good chance I may not come back out of that? That's a tall order, and that's a lot of character in those people that are willing to do that. And that idea that you're willing to put someone else's life before your own life. It's a big thing. It's a big calling. It's an honor to do that. And for me, having a special needs family, my wife and I, that's what we do. We serve our children because they're adults now, but they still live with us and they will live with us. And there is this kind of an idea of a calling of continually serving one another. That's within that kind of a context. And so I hope when people look at it, this sculpture in particular, that they can look and see, especially this idea of the fireman that's ready to go and serve, and the other one I can also serve through prayer sometimes. And I can also serve just by, well wishes or something of that nature, of just understanding that, we're all here enduring. And how do we endure together, and how do we encourage one another in that process and not tear apart or rip apart? This just happens to be a memorial about a very big event and a big thing. So obviously it generates a lot of emotion about that. But, there's many ways just to be that small, quiet voice that's still needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my only final things was just to say thank you for this. There's just been so many people. I wish I could list them all, but I know you probably don't want me to. But there's just so many other people that have helped and encouraged and been part of this process. It's not a one-man job. I know I'm going to get a lot of the credit as the artist, my concept, but I had to rely on just a number of other craftsmen and other people to come alongside me for that, and just even within the city, people kind of navigating and helping get things pushed through. And so just to thank you that it's teamwork. This isn't an individual thing. This is teamwork that got this together, and really appreciative of all the people that have helped and poured into it, and especially my family and my wife and kids that have kind of endured, the craziness of it at times. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate all of them and what they've done to help this process as well.
To truly grasp the essence of this work of art, you have to witness it in person. It's a visual testament to the indomitable spirit of those who answer the call, no matter the danger, and to the unity that binds us all as Americans. On Saturday, September 9th at 10:30 a.m., we'll be unveiling this beautiful piece of art at Fire Station 2, located at 8602 Strady Road. The City of Rowlett Arts and Humanities Commission invites you to bear witness to this momentous occasion. If you can't make it in person, we'll be sharing footage from the event on our social media channels on September 11th. Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of the My Rowlett podcast. We invite you to stay connected by subscribing to our show on your favorite podcast platform. And if there's ever a topic or guest you would like to have on the show, feel free to email us at podcast@rowlett.com. And I want to express one last thank you to our first responders who serve our community so well 24/7.